Right. So this evening we're going to go through this idea of tracking expenses. This is a particularly relevant topic because our practice, incidentally, just deals in healthcare professionals, mostly physicians. And so this is a topic that I find tracking expenses and just a system for keeping track of expenses is something that is really misunderstood. There's a lot of questions about with people. So that's the reason for this evening session. Now, right at the outset, who should attend this session? Well, I've said it's for medical residents, it's for fellows and new to practice physicians. But if you are one of those, but you have incorporated your practice, in other words, you're operating your practice through a corporation, a medical professional corporation, this session is not for you. We handle this differently in the course of ongoing bookkeeping and keeping track of expenses. So if that's you this evening, then you may find this of interest, but you won't find that this is particularly practical. In fact, doing this system will actually increase your workload. It'll be redundant. So I'm just putting that in so that there's no misunderstanding. So this is for someone who is unincorporated, who is either a medical resident, a fellow, or a new to practice physician, but has not yet gone through incorporation. Our agenda this evening on screen addresses the question why this expense tracking system is so important, examples of how not to track expenses. And we'll be spending, we've got some slides in here in terms of very practical ways of downloading data from your bank's website, and then how to use our expense tracking worksheet, and the importance of setting this as a monthly habit. All right. So by the time we're finished this evening, you will have a system that you can use, and quite frankly, it's a system I continue to use and have for years. So I think you'll find that this is a very effective way of keeping track of expenses. Why this webinar? Well, I've explained a little bit, but it's to demystify this whole idea of keeping track of expenses. I see people going to great lengths to prepare spreadsheets, putting in hours just to come up with a spreadsheet, and it's time that's completely wasted. And so just with a little bit of thought and following through with this particular system, I think you'll find that it doesn't have to be painful at all. So you'll come out with a turnkey way of tracking your expenses in a minimal amount of time. The technology that's already available is such that you can do this in 20 minutes a month, and that's all it takes. And then also I'll just quickly explain what Canada Revenue Agency's document retention requirements are. I get asked that question a lot. How long do I have to keep receipts? Do I need to keep receipts? What do I need to keep? So those are the items, those are the issues that we're going to cover this evening. All right, examples of how not to keep track of expenses. This method is called the haven't got a hope of retrieving the receipt when being audited by CRA approach. All right, so what you see on screen here is somebody who has created a spreadsheet, and they've done it by month, and then as they go, they create the descriptions or the categories, and you can see down on the left side of this particular worksheet, they've got all of these different descriptions or categories, and then I've highlighted one of the cells because you can notice in one of the cells that there is 3 or 4 expense items. We don't know what they're for. We just know that one was $12, one was $3.48, and one was $11. But when you're getting audited and you give this expense spreadsheet to an auditor, they're going to say, so do you have the receipt for the item that was for $12? And you're going to go, well, I know it was in Jan, and you probably haven't got a hope of finding that receipt. And that's what they're going to look for. And if you can't produce that receipt, they're going to deny that expense. So this is one of the ways not to keep track of your expenses. It is not a practical way. It won't do you any good. You might as well not even do it. All right. Now, the problems with the method, as I've mentioned, it duplicates data already available in a credit card or bank website, and I'll explain to you what I mean by that. But what most people don't realize is that the data from their credit card statements or their purchasing history, all of that data is available from your bank website. So there is no reason why somebody would have to go to the trouble to duplicate data that's already been entered. Why would you do that? Why not just download it and work with it? And then the second deficiency here is that the descriptions are used rather than categories. So if you recall, I had mentioned that this person was making up the categories as they go. And so if you looked on that particular spreadsheet, you would see one item or one cell that had movies, and another row had entertainment, and another row had eating out. But for CRA purposes, they would put all of that together into a category and call it meals and entertainment. So now the person's created this spreadsheet, they have all of these different descriptions, they're gonna have to pull it together and try to summarize it. Another example would be, they had 3 lines on there. One line or one row was CMPA, one row was CPSO, one row was OMA, instead of a general category called membership and dues. And so again, that method of keeping track with that format of spreadsheet is of no avail. What you would want to do is come up with a spreadsheet that aligns with the categories that CRA uses on forms T777, which is the employment expense schedule, or the T2125, which is the statement of business activities. The next deficiency is there's no details around the transactions. In other words, it doesn't say that, you know, this was at such and such a restaurant, or these were bank charges, or so on. These are just totals that are put into each cell. So there's no reference between the amount in the cell and the receipts themselves. So good luck, as I say, when you're in a CRA audit, trying to figure out what that particular amount in a given cell was for. It just doesn't work, and it wastes time. Now, there's another method which I see, which is called the cherry pick approach to expense tracking. And what do I mean by that? That means somebody goes through and they put down this expense or this purchase in the hopes that they've captured everything. So what we end up with is a list that is kind of a cherry-picked approach to expenses, hoping that you've caught everything. And they may go through the various categories. You can see on this particular spreadsheet, there are some categories to the right, but and they've classified the expenses by those categories, which isn't bad. But the difficulty with this approach or this method is that, again, it duplicates data that's already available, it wastes time, and it misses deductions. So that's a problem. We don't want to miss deductions. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way here. Let me back up. We don't want to miss deductions. And that's what this approach does. You take your best guess and hope that this expense or that expense would qualify. All right. Now, then we come to this format. We call this the expense tracking worksheet. And this is set up to receive the data that has already been captured by the credit card company or the bank. And so what you end up doing is, and I'll show you in a moment how to do that, but the big picture item here is that you would capture all of the data, download the data into a CSV formatted file, and that would, in a moment, in an instant, that data is available, and you cut and paste that data into this expense tracking spreadsheet. And at the top of the of this worksheet is a sample of the data that's been downloaded. Now, when you download this information, you're not going to then go through and eliminate certain lines. The concept here with this expense tracking spreadsheet is that you're going to keep track of every item. And so that's part of the reason that we go to this detail. But that's just a taste of what we'll be getting to in the next couple of minutes in terms of working through that spreadsheet. But the idea is capture data that's already available, don't duplicate it, and then import it into this spreadsheet and then allocate it by category as you go on a monthly basis. So this particular expense tracking system is important because it uses technology to avoid duplication. It ensures that your records are audit proof. So when CRA comes along and they ask you for the receipt, you can identify the date, where the money was spent in the category, then go through your records or your receipts, retrieve them, and provide them to CRA. The advantage of this is that it will immediately have an impact on the calculation of your income, because you will now have a complete listing of your expenses, and in a fraction of the time that one might have in trying to reconstruct or prepare their own formatted expense tracking worksheet. So that's why this expense tracking system is so important, and it's easy. So those are the reasons that we end up working through this particular system. Again, just to reiterate what I've said. All right. We continue through. Now, what are the requirements to use this? All right. Firstly, you need a copy of this particular tracking worksheet. You can create your own now that you've had a glimpse of what we've done, or if you'd like to work from the version that we've created, I'm happy to give you that. You can work away with that. The next requirement is one credit card. And notice I've said only one for all of your purchases, for both personal and practice related. So oftentimes clients will say to me, well, I've been told to keep one credit card for my practice related expenses and one for my personal expenses. Well, that isn't a great idea from the standpoint that, firstly, some expenses are both personal and business. And as an example of that, cell phones would be an example where you use it for work, but you also, there's a personal component. Vehicle would be another example where you use your car for personal trips as well as for business trips. So you will quickly run into a situation where you're not certain which credit card to use because you're not sure. Well, you know what, it's both. I'm not sure which I should use. Not only that, but it assumes when we accountants tell you as clients, keep track of your business expenses, it assumes that you know what a business expense is. And quite honestly, with all due respect, someone who's never been trained to identify an expense is going to miss things. And so the reason I suggest to people that they capture everything and put it all on one spreadsheet is because then you will send that through, and that's what we'll see. We'll see all of the transactions, those that you consider to be personal, as well as those that you consider to be business or practice related. And it's in that process then that everything is captured so that everything can be seen. So just a word about that. When you download that data, when you put it into that spreadsheet, don't then go and eliminate lines. Leave everything as is. All of the data in its entirety gets put onto this expense tracking spreadsheet. So don't go and filter it and delete lines and rows, because you might delete valid expenses. So that's the reason that we say capture everything and use one credit card. Another reason for using one credit card. One credit card produces 12 statements a year. If you have 2, 3, or 4 credit cards, that's 24, 36, or 48 statements a year. Think of the amount of work you're making for yourself. So I suggest to people they use one credit card. Now, sometimes people say, well, I'll use American Express because I get good points on it, and fair enough, but how frequently do you go into an establishment and they say, sorry, we don't take American Express? So you now find yourself having to reach for your Visa or your MasterCard. So I say to people, the most widely accepted credit card is MasterCard. Go for a MasterCard if you can. The second is Visa. So it enables you with this system to capture as many expenses as possible. A word about how to keep track of expenses. Sometimes you might be in the habit of spending cash for things. I always say to people, don't use cash, because when you get a receipt, you might lose that receipt and there is no way of verifying that expense in the future. So instead of that, pay for everything that you can using a credit card. That is your funnel for keeping track of your expenses. So that's the second thing you need. First, the worksheet itself. Secondly, a credit card for use on all purchase, on all business and personal purchases. Not one card that is for personal and one card that's for business. The next is a box of number 10 envelopes. What am I talking about? Well, we've talked about capturing data, We talked about putting it onto a spreadsheet, but one of the things that people ask is, well, do I have to keep my receipts or my statements? So I'm showing you my wallet. This is what I do. Here is my one credit card. These are all of my receipts for the month. CRA expects that you will keep the actual receipts itself. So this is the actual receipt. So my system is this. I keep all of my receipts. I mean, ones that I can and can't deduct, I don't care. I keep them all. And so my process each month is I get my credit card statement right here. I go through it and I check it to make sure that all of the items that I've been charged for, I'm in agreement with. I pull out all my receipts. So it's the statement itself. When it's sent to me, that's the triggering event that sets this process in motion. I take all these receipts. I don't sort them. I don't put them in a nice pile. I take them and I put them in an envelope, a number 10 envelope, along with the credit card statement itself. On the front, I write the credit card name. I write the month, December 2020. So it's for the month of December 2020. Underneath that, I write the number 7, and I total that. It gives me 27. Why do I do that? Because in December 2027, I can throw that envelope away. Now, I take that envelope and I put it in a dark place. Why do I do that? Because if these receipts are left exposed to light, within a few weeks, you won't be able to read them. And if a CRA auditor cannot read that receipt, they won't accept the expense. You'll have to get an original, you have to go through the trouble of going and trying to get a copy. So that's the process every month. Take that, put it in a box, put it in a drawer somewhere in a dark place, and forget about it. When you get audited by CRA, and they'll say, give us your membership dues, you'll go back to your expense tracking worksheet, and you'll look and you'll see all of the items in there, and you'll say, okay, there they are, it's CPSO, OMA, CMA, CMPA. Go through, pull out the receipts, and give them to the CRA auditor, upload them to the CRA website, and satisfy the requirement to take a look at the originals. All right, so that's the process that happens every month. That's a bit of an aside from what we were talking about, but I know people will likely ask the question, what about receipts? A CRA auditor will not accept a credit card statement as proof of a purchase. They want the receipts, okay? All right, so that's the system for that. So these are the requirements: the spreadsheet, a credit card, and a box of number 10 envelopes. So far, so good? Oh, and a dedicated drawer or a box to keep track of these. All right. Now, just to refresh your memory, this is the worksheet. The top in yellow is a sample of the data that's come from a bank or credit card company's downloaded data. You can see it. It's got the date. It's got where it was purchased. It has the amount, all of that information that you'll need. And then to the right of that, you'll see columns which fit the categories of the CRA forms, the T777 form for employment expense, the T2125, the statement of business activities. All of the headings in those categories are designed to correspond to the line that you're going to have to populate when you file your tax return. All right. How to download your expenses quickly from your bank's website. We're going to go through the banks here, but I'm going to leave this for you to look at more closely for the actual slides from this presentation. The first one we'll start with is RBC. Here's the screenshot when somebody logs in. We've put an arrow into that particular screenshot. That's step 1. Step 2 is there's a box on the left-hand side or a hyperlink on the left-hand side that says download transactions. You'll do that. Step number 3, you'll select the format of the file. In this case, you're going to select a a CSV file, and you're going to download that data, and it's going to open up an Excel spreadsheet, a CSV file, and it's going to give you that month's data. You're going to take that data, highlight it all, and copy and paste it into the expense tracking worksheet. All right, here's Scotiabank. This is the screen you're going to get when you log in. Once you've logged in, then you're going to see, this is, I think, a two-step approach for Scotiabank. You're going to set the date range and the file type, and you're going to download that data. TD Bank. Again, same functionality is available. You're going to select the account, and then from there, you're going to designate or specify the date range, download it into a CSV file. So again, these are the three steps you're going to go to if you bank with TD. Bank with CIBC, step number 1 or screen number 1. Screen number 2, download transactions. That's a two-step approach with CIBC. BMO, step 1, you log in. Step 2, you select the download account details. And then step 3 or screen 3, select the transactions by date range. That's BMO. All right, so those are the major banks and the screens that you would need to navigate in order to get to download the data. Now, I've shown you overall 1 month's cycle. You're going to do the same thing the next month. You're going to repeat the process. And what you're going to do is download that data using those screens, and you're going to add it to the expense tracking worksheet. So underneath the previous month's data. So now you have 2 months data. So by the end of February or early March, you will have January and February sitting in that expense tracking worksheet. As you go through the year, you'll continue to repeat that same process month after month. And by the time you reach December this year, you will have 12 months of data in your spreadsheet. All you have to do each month is just quickly go through, identify the expenses that match the columns or the categories, and populate them. Now, once you've done that, you would send that through to your accountant, send it through to our office if we work together, and we would look through that. We would look for expenses that may not be deductible. You may have taken your best stab at it, but you may claim things that are not deductible, or you may not claim things that are deductible, and that's the reason we say include everything, so that we can see everything. I use this example. It happened a couple of years ago with a new to practice physician. She was following this process. She sent through her spreadsheets, and I was going through it, and I recognized a little inn in Eastern Ontario, a little bed and breakfast. And I recognized it because my wife and I had gone there the year before. And so when I was speaking to her about her expenses on her spreadsheet, I said, tell me about this little inn. And she said, oh, it was just a girls' weekend away. And I said, so if I can ask, who are the girls? And she said, oh, just some girls from work. And I said, so you didn't mark that as an expense? And she said, well, I thought it was personal. And I said, well, did you talk about work? And she said, well, that's pretty much all we talked about. And I said, well, we can't claim the whole thing because there clearly is a personal element here, but there is a meal or two here where your discussion was around work. If we hadn't seen that, we wouldn't have been able to claim that expense. Now, a word about what an expense is. It may sound obvious. You may think, well, why would you ask that question? Well, it's surprising. It isn't actually that obvious. An expense is something that is incurred, a purchase that's incurred that has a relationship or a direct connection with earning your income. So you incur the expense in the course of earning your income. That young physician incurred an expense that pertained to earning her income. And that's the concept that you want to come away with. So it's not going to be a laundry list of expenses, kind of a cookbook approach. You want to keep that concept clearly in mind, that if I'm incurring an expense in the course of earning my income, that is an expense. Now notice I didn't say you could deduct it necessarily. So you might incur an expense for a meal. You have a meal with a colleague. You go out and have a meal with your accountant or your lawyer. You talk about your practice. It's clearly an expense. It is in connection with earning your income. But the Income Tax Act, this 2,700-page act, says for meals and entertainment, you can only claim 50%. Now, you wouldn't know that, but that's the job of your accountant. Your job, capture the data. And as you're going through that data and thinking about each of those purchases, ask yourself, did I incur this expense in the course of earning my income? If you did, put it into one of those columns. All right, does that make sense? All right, now just a word about how many credit cards. I have some clients who insist on not following one credit card. I mentioned earlier, if you have two, you have 24 statements a year to keep track of. You have 3, you have 36. You have to maintain 3 spreadsheets. The idea here is make it fast and use the data to your advantage. Don't worry about, well, I get these points on this card and these points on that card. The cost of your time plus professional fees just to keep track of those is really oftentimes not worth it. Look for a good credit card with good features like a MasterCard and stick with that, or Visa. All right. Let's see, how are we doing here? We've talked about number of credit cards. Now let me move on. Frequently asked questions around this topic. First one, what about practice-related expenses that come from my personal bank account, like CMPA, CPSO, OMA, CMA, cell phone, car phone expense, or car expenses? How do I keep track of these? And this is a very good point, because in all reality, there are times where you can't charge everything on your credit card. You can't charge CMPA on a credit card. So those items are going to go through your personal bank account or your business bank account. Well, the same technology, the same functionality that we download data from your credit card is also applied to your bank account. So you would keep a separate spreadsheet, go through the same process of downloading data each month from your personal bank account, because your personal bank account has not only personal expenses, but it also has practice-related expenses. So you're going to do the same thing. Dump it all into a spreadsheet, a separate spreadsheet, and go through it and allocate the expenses that you couldn't charge on a credit card. Now, if you've got some charges that are going through your personal bank account, well, ask yourself, could I put this on my credit card? Can I earn extra points by doing that? If you can, switch it over. If you can't, then you're stuck with it. And you're stuck with not only downloading your credit card charges, but also the monthly bank expenses as well. As I say, make sure you keep the receipts. Absolutely keep all the receipts. All right. All right. Next question. Will the CRA accept scanned receipts, or do I have to keep paper copies? The CRA will accept scanned receipts, no problem, as long as they're legible. It doesn't matter if they're hard copy or soft copy. As long as they can read the receipts, it's not a problem. They will accept scanned documents. If you scan those documents on your phone, make sure they're backed up automatically into the cloud, because if something happens to your phone, there goes all your receipts. So make sure you've got that hooked up to automatically upload those images to a file safely out of harm's way. How long do I keep my receipts for? Well, CRA says 6 years from the end of the last tax year that they relate to. So I say to people, keep them for 7 years. If you keep them for 7 years, you've met the 6-year requirement, but it's 6 years from the end of the last tax year. Most people will say, okay, what does that mean? Keep them for 7 years and you're fine. All right, that's the advice I give to clients with respect to how long to keep receipts. All right, should I keep all of my receipts? Yes. You may, if you don't keep all of your receipts, you may throw out a receipt that actually is a business receipt. Keep them all. It doesn't cost anything to do. And sometimes you have to return things. So by keeping receipts, if you bought something that you need to return, you don't have to worry about whether or not you have the receipts. You have everything. So keep all your receipts. What if I can purchase something cheaper by paying cash? I talked about this a little bit earlier. This is dealing with the underground economy. Should I do it? No, don't. You need the receipt. If it's an expense that you can claim, there is no point in paying cash because the tax rate will be higher than the savings that you are going to get by paying cash. And I would say don't encourage the underground economy. We have a great country. We need our government to continue to provide the services we do, and part of that comes from our paying our taxes, and everybody chips in. So don't pay for things with cash, and always get a receipt. Don't forego a receipt. Do you recommend using personal accounting software like Mint or Quicken? Yep, absolutely I do. The purpose of this presentation tonight is not to discourage you from going deeper and using more sophisticated tools, but for those who are starting out that just want a platform, a way of doing things, that's why we use Excel in this format to capture that information. But by all means, use Mint, Quicken, QuickBooks if you want to go more in depth. They can be useful for personal budgeting and so on, but not everybody wants to do that. But absolutely, if you're interested in that, by all means use that. Be careful when you're linking your bank account or credit card account with the accounting software. There was some concern, I don't know if it's been addressed or not, but that you'll find if you read the fine print of your bank card or your credit card terms and conditions, it will put in there that you will never divulge your password to a third party. Well, if you hook up your bank and credit card accounts to software, you will have to give your password. So the concern was if there was ever a fraud, could the bank come back and say, you've given your password to a third party, we're not covering your loss. That's the reason for making that point. All right, I hope that's been useful so far, but do you have questions? Mustafa, are you seeing anything in chat?
No, nothing so far.
Nothing so far? All right, some parting thoughts. Don't fall behind in this process. Don't let it go a few months. The longer you go, the bigger the job appears to be when you sit down to do it. This is a fast task to do each month. Not only that, each bank will have their own online data retention period policy. And if you fall behind, you may come to a point where you actually can't retrieve that data. And then in that case, then you're going to have to input it manually, which again gets back to a waste of time. So don't do it. You stay on top of this and do it each month. Let your credit card statement be the trigger for this process. So once you receive notification that your credit card statement's in, then that sets the process in motion for that month and each month that follows thereafter. So spend 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes a month just doing this, all right? And also filing away your receipts themselves. All right, Mustafa, I think there's a couple of questions I'm seeing coming in.
Yeah. Dr. Anthony is asking, do you recommend any receipt-keeping apps?
There are some that integrate, but their name escapes me at this point. So no, to answer your question, I can't think of any off the top of my head. My own feeling, Anthony, is that this is my own preference, but I don't go to the wall on this with people. We're all different, and certain tools suit our styles. So for me, I keep everything in paper format. That's me. But if you find something that works, I would check reviews, online reviews, and so on. Part of the advantage I think that you'll find with some of those types of apps is that they will grab data off of the actual receipt itself and populate transactions in, say, Quicken or Mint or QuickBooks, and so that certainly is appealing. You still have to verify that it's picked up the information accurately, but certainly that is an appealing feature. So I hope that helps. Mustafa, anything else?
Dr. Aram is asking if there's any future webinars regarding incorporated physicians.
We don't have them on the immediately on our schedule, but certainly that is a popular topic. So we'll add that to the list as we go, and we'll be doing webinars on a monthly basis. So stay tuned and keep an eye out on the topics. Right now, oftentimes our topics are driven by the time of year. So we're starting a new year. So this is a good time to get your bookkeeping process off to a good start. Next month, we're dealing with RRSPs, some considerations when considering putting money into RSPs, and also how to get ready, how to prepare for getting all your records together. What should you be looking for? And then we'll continue to look for other topics. So I'll certainly keep that in mind for a future topic, though. Mustafa, anything else?
No, it looks like that's it so far.
All right. Just a reminder, you may have colleagues or you may be interested yourself that as long as you are a medical resident or a fellow, in the course of your training, our firm offers complimentary Canadian personal income tax return preparation. So we're here to support you in your training and getting you started on a good footing. So feel free to contact us on that to see if you qualify. All right, as I mentioned, the usefulness of RSPs is next month's topic. So stay tuned. We will send out reminders on that, and they will have links to register. So that's next month's topic. That's the first of two. Thanks for your time, everyone. I hope this has been useful.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Jonathan. This was really great.
Good. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.